Welcome to DCF Investigations. Imagine the sprawling, fog-laden landscape of Northern California in the late 1960s. It was a time of seismic cultural shifting, a period defined by the summer of love, the rise of counterculture, and a generation seeking peace and liberation. But beneath the psychedelic veneer of San Francisco and the quiet, rolling hills of the surrounding Bay Area, a darkness was festering. A darkness that would not only shatter the illusion of safety for millions, but would also spawn a legend that haunts the American psyche to this very day. We are here to walk the timeline of a nightmare. We are here to investigate the Zodiac, to understand the terror that gripped California. We must first immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of Vallejo and Benicia in 1968. These were working-class communities, deeply connected to the naval shipyards and the rhythms of suburban life. Families left their doors unlocked. Teenagers cruised the main drags on Friday nights, finding solace in the seclusion of lovers' lanes scattered along the dark, winding country roads. It was in this setting of assumed innocence that the monster first struck. The date was December 20th, 1968. The air was biting cold, and the Christmas holiday was just around the corner. David Faraday, a 17-year-old high school student known for his intelligence and gentle demeanor, was preparing for a date. He was an Eagle Scout, a wrestler, and a young man with a bright future. That night, he was taking out 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen. Betty Lou was a junior at Hogan High School, described by friends as quiet and artistic. This was their very first official date. David had borrowed his mother's station wagon, promising to have Betty Lou home by 11 o'clock. The couple drove out to Lake Herman Road, a lonely stretch of pavement connecting Benicia and Vallejo. It was a spot well known to locals, pitch black at night, bordered by open fields and the occasional farmhouse. Around 10:15 that evening, David pulled the Rambler station wagon into a gravel turnout near the pumping station. They were there to talk, to listen to the radio, to enjoy the privacy that teenagers have sought for generations. Witnesses who drove by the scene later reconstructed a timeline of escalating danger. A car was seen parked next to them, then leaving, then returning. Shortly after 11 o'clock, a second vehicle pulled in beside the station wagon. What happened next was a calculated execution. The assailant did not demand money. He did not speak. He exited his vehicle and immediately began firing into the station wagon. The bullets shattered the rear window and the left rear tire, forcing the teenagers out of the car. Betty Lou Jensen exited the passenger door and ran for her life. The killer tracked her in the dark, firing 5 shots into her back. She fell dead just 28 feet from the car. David Faraday was shot once in the head at point-blank range as he emerged from the driver's side. He was still breathing when the first passers-by discovered the horrific scene minutes later. But he would succumb to his injuries before reaching the hospital. The brutality of the Lake Herman Road murders shocked the community. But at the time, investigators viewed it as an isolated incident, perhaps a jealous ex-boyfriend or a drug deal gone wrong. There was no signature, no note, no reason to suspect a serial predator. The trail went cold almost immediately. The Solano County Sheriff's Office interviewed friends and family, but no motive could be found. The killer had vanished into the night, leaving behind no fingerprints and no shell casings that could be traced to a specific weapon. Only the haunting silence of a tragedy that defied explanation. 6 months passed. The fear began to subside. Life in Vallejo returned to a semblance of normalcy. Then came the night of July 4th, 1969. Darlene Farron was 22 years old, a vivacious and popular waitress at a local Terry's waffle shop. She was a young mother and a woman with a complex social life, known for her generosity and her wide circle of acquaintances. That night, she picked up 19-year-old Michael Majot. Darlene was married, and her relationship with Michael was platonic, though complicated. They decided to drive out to Blue Rock Springs Park, another secluded area just a few miles from the site of the Lake Herman Road murders. It was shortly after midnight on July 5th. Darlene parked her brown Corvair in the deserted lot. They were chatting, the radio playing low. A car pulled into the lot, then left. Minutes later, it returned, parking behind them to block their exit. A man stepped out of the vehicle. He held a high-powered flashlight, blinding Darlene and Michael with its beam. Thinking he was a police officer checking on them, the couple began to reach for their identification. The man walked to the passenger side window. Without a word, he raised a 9mm semi-automatic pistol and opened fire. Michael Majot was hit in the jaw, shoulder, and leg. He threw himself into the back seat in a desperate attempt to escape the hail of bullets. Darlene was struck multiple times. The gunman turned to walk away, but upon hearing Michael moan in pain, he returned to the car and fired 2 more shots into each victim before calmly driving off into the darkness. Miraculously, Michael Majot survived. Despite his horrific injuries, he was able to provide police with a description of the attacker. A white male, heavy-set, round face, short brown hair, appearing to be in his late 20s or early 30s. But the true horror of that night was yet to come. At 12:40 a.m., the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call. The dispatcher answered to hear a low, monotonous voice. The caller said, "I wish to report a double murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to a public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." The line went dead. The call was traced to a payphone just blocks from the police station, right in front of the sheriff's office. Police rushed to the phone booth, but the caller was gone. This was the turning point. The killer was not just hunting, he was taunting. He was claiming credit for the Lake Herman Road murders, linking the 2 crimes and announcing his presence to the world. The media frenzy began in earnest on July 31st, 1969. 3 nearly identical letters arrived at the offices of the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. The envelopes contained details of the murders that only the killer could know. The number of shots fired, the brand of ammo, the positioning of the bodies. But enclosed with the letters was something far more sinister. A 3-part cipher, a grid of symbols and Greek letters that the writer claimed revealed his identity. The writer demanded that the newspapers print the ciphers on the front page, or else he would go on a killing rampage, cruising around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then moving on to kill again, until he had killed a dozen people over the weekend. The city of San Francisco held its breath. The newspapers complied, printing the codes. The police chief of Vallejo asked the writer to send another letter with more facts to prove he was indeed the killer. Days later, another letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. It began with a phrase that would become infamous: chilling the blood of anyone who read it. It started, "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." It was the first time the name was used. The persona was born, the Zodiac, a name that implied celestial power, fate, and inevitability. While the police struggled to crack the code, a history teacher and his wife from Salinas, California, Donald and Betty Harden, sat down at their kitchen table. They were amateur puzzle solvers. Over the course of a weekend, using frequency analysis and sheer intuition, they managed to break the 408-character cipher. The message was a terrifying glimpse into the mind of a psychopath. It read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest. Because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill something. Gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is when I die, I will be reborn in paradise. And all the I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." The cipher did not reveal his name. It only deepened the mystery and the horror. The misspelling of paradise and the chilling logic of a man collecting slaves for the afterlife suggested a delusional, yet highly organized and intelligent offender. The terror moved north in September of 1969. Lake Berryessa in Napa County is a picturesque reservoir, a place of recreation and beauty. On September 27th, Pacific Union College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking on a small peninsula jutting out into the water. It was a lazy, sun-drenched afternoon. They noticed a man watching them from a distance, but he disappeared behind a tree. Moments later, the man reappeared. This time, he was wearing a costume that seemed ripped from the pages of a comic book or a medieval executioner's manual. He wore a black executioner's hood with a white cross circle symbol stitched onto the chest. He held a gun and approached the terrified couple. He told them a story, that he was an escaped convict from a prison in Montana, that he had killed a guard and stolen a car, and that he needed their vehicle and money to go to Mexico. Brian Hartnell, trying to keep the situation calm, engaged the man in conversation. He offered his wallet. He tried to reason with him. The man ordered Cecilia to tie Brian up with pre-cut lengths of plastic clothesline he had brought with him. Then, the man tied Cecilia up. Once they were helpless, the man's demeanor changed. The robbery ruse was dropped. He drew a long, knife-like bayonet. He stabbed Brian Hartnell 6 times in the back. He then turned on Cecilia Shepard, stabbing her 10 times. The violence was frenzied, yet methodical. He left them for dead. Before leaving the scene, the Zodiac walked to Brian's car, a white Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. On the passenger door, he wrote with a black felt-tip pen, "Vallejo, 12-2068, 7-469, Sept 2769, 6:30. He was keeping score. He was documenting his work. A fisherman and his son discovered the couple and alerted park rangers. Both were alive when help arrived. Cecilia Shepard, fighting through immense pain, was able to give a detailed description of the hooded man and his voice before lapsing into a coma. She died 2 days later at the hospital. Brian Hartnell, despite suffering grievous wounds, survived. His testimony provided the most harrowing and detailed account of the Zodiac's methods and his strange, almost theatrical desire for interaction before the violence. The investigation was now a multi-jurisdictional nightmare. Solano County, Napa County, and soon San Francisco would all be hunting the same ghost. 2 weeks later, on October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac changed his pattern completely. He moved from the secluded rural lovers' lanes to the dense, upscale urban environment of Presidio Heights in San Francisco. Paul Stine was a 29-year-old cab driver, a student working to support his family. He picked up a fare in the theater district, a man who asked to be taken to Washington and Maple Streets. When the cab arrived near the destination, 1 block away at Washington and Cherry, the passenger shot Paul Stine once in the head. This was not a robbery gone wrong, although the killer took Stine's wallet and keys. In a gruesome act that would later serve as proof of his identity, the killer tore a large section of Paul Stine's blood-stained shirt. Witnesses in a house across the street saw the attack. They saw the man wiping down the cab, seemingly removing fingerprints. They called the police. But in the chaos of the dispatch, a critical error occurred. The dispatcher mistakenly described the suspect as a black male. 2 patrol officers, Don Fook and Eric Zelms, were responding to the scene. They passed a white man walking away from the area, a man who fit the description of the Zodiac perfectly. Heavy build, glasses, lumbering gait. But because they were looking for a black male, they did not stop him. They may have looked the Zodiac Killer in the eye and let him walk away into the fogs of the Presidio Park. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter. Inside was a piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt. The Zodiac mocked the police for their incompetence. He wrote about how he was walking down the street when the cop car passed him. He threatened to blow up a school bus, stating he would just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. This threat sent the Bay Area into a panic. School buses were given police escorts. Curfews were enacted. The Zodiac was no longer just a killer of couples. He was a domestic terrorist, holding an entire population hostage with his words. As the 70s dawned, the Zodiac continued to write. He sent greeting cards, diagrams for bombs, and more ciphers, including the infamous 340-character cipher that would remain unsolved for over 50 years. He claimed to have killed more people, tallying his victims like a sports score. Zodiac 37, SFPD 0. He took credit for the abduction of Kathleen Johns, a woman driving with her infant daughter who was tricked into pulling over by a man who claimed her wheel was loose. The man drove her around for hours before she escaped into a field. He was also linked tentatively to the disappearance of Donna Lass, a nurse from South Lake Tahoe. Though her body was never found, and the connection remains debated by experts. The investigation produced thousands of leads and suspects. But one man stood out above all others: Arthur Leigh Allen. Arthur Leigh Allen was a convicted child molester living in Vallejo. He came to the attention of police in 1971. The circumstantial evidence against him was staggering. He had told a friend years earlier that he wanted to kill couples and call himself Zodiac. He wore a Zodiac brand watch, which featured the cross-circle symbol on its face. He owned a typewriter that matched the type used in the Riverside letters, a possible early Zodiac connection. He had the same shoe size as the prints found at Lake Berryessa. He lived minutes from the first murder scene and minutes from the victim, Darlene Farron, whom he allegedly stalked. Detectives Jack Mulinax and Dave Tosky, the lead investigators, grilled Allen. He was cool, arrogant, and played cat-and-mouse games with them, He admitted to having bloody knives in his car on the day of the Lake Berryessa attack, but claimed he used them to kill chickens. Despite the mounting pile of coincidences, physical evidence failed to stick. His handwriting did not match the Zodiac letters. His fingerprints did not match the few prints lifted from the Paul Stine cab. Later, DNA tests on the stamps and envelopes, though primitive and degraded, did not rule him in. Allen died in 1992, claiming innocence to the end, leaving investigators with a gnawing sense of unresolved suspicion. But Allen was not the only suspect. Over the decades, researchers and amateur sleuths have proposed others. There was Richard Gaikowski, a newspaper editor who worked in the Bay Area and whose voice allegedly sounded like the Zodiac. There was Ross Sullivan, a library assistant who disappeared after the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside, a crime often linked to the Zodiac. Sullivan bore a striking resemblance to the police sketch and wore military boots similar to those that left prints at Lake Berryessa. More recently, a group called the Casebreakers identified a man named Gary Francis Post as the Zodiac. They pointed to scars on his forehead that matched the police sketch and claimed to have deciphered hidden messages in the letters that revealed his name. However, the FBI and local law enforcement have not officially verified these claims, and many experts dismiss the evidence as circumstantial and speculative. The investigation also delved into the possibility of multiple killers. Was the Zodiac a team? One person writing the letters and another committing the crimes? This theory attempts to explain the discrepancies in the physical descriptions and the lack of a match in handwriting and DNA. But like all other theories, it lacks the definitive smoking gun. Let us turn our attention to the ciphers, the most enduring legacy of the killer's mind games. For decades, the 340-character cipher taunted the world. The best cryptographers at the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA could not crack it. It stood as a monument to the killer's intelligence. Then, in December 2020, 51 years after it was mailed, a breakthrough occurred. A team of 3 private citizens, David Oranchak, Sam Blake, and Jarl von Eyck, used custom software and massive computing power to solve it. The message was not a confession. It was not a name. It was another taunt. It read, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That was not me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid, because I know that my new life will be an easy one in paradise death." The message confirmed that the caller who had rung into a morning talk show claiming to be Zodiac was a fake, but it offered no clues to his identity. It only reinforced the delusion of a man obsessed with his own mythology. The legacy of the Zodiac Killer extends far beyond the tragic loss of life. He changed the way we live. He was the first serial killer to manipulate the mass media so effectively, turning newspapers into his personal press agents. He inspired films like Dirty Harry, which sought to give the public the fictional justice they never received in reality. He inspired the character of Scorpio, and later, the Riddler in modern cinema. He became a dark pop culture icon, a symbol of the unknown terror that lurks in the shadows of ordinary life. Forensic science has advanced light years since 1969. We now have touch DNA, genetic genealogy, and digital forensics. items of evidence from the Zodiac case have been re-examined multiple times. A partial DNA profile was developed in 2002, but it was not enough to identify a suspect, only to exclude some. In 2018, the Vallejo police sent envelopes to a private lab, hoping to find saliva on the back of stamps or the flaps. The hope was to use the same technique that caught the Golden State Killer, building a family tree from DNA to find the killer's relatives. As of now, those results have not yielded a public identification. The degradation of the samples over 50 years, combined with improper handling in the early days of the investigation, poses a significant hurdle. We must also consider the victims: Betty Lou Jensen, David Faraday, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stine. They were not just names in a cipher or points on a map. They were sons, daughters, lovers, and friends. Their lives were stolen, and their families were left to navigate a grief compounded by the public spectacle of the killer's fame. The survivors, Michael Mageau and Brian Hartnell, carried the physical and psychological scars of their encounters for the rest of their lives. Brian Hartnell became a lawyer, living a quiet life, rarely speaking of the terror he endured. Michael Mageau struggled, drifting through life, haunted by the face in the flashlight beam. So, where does the case stand today? It remains open in Napa County, Solano County, and the city of San Francisco. It is the most famous unsolved murder case in American history. Every year, new theories emerge. New books are written. New suspects are named. But the man who called himself the Zodiac remains a phantom. Was he a genius mastermind, or a lucky sadist who bumbled his way through investigations that were hampered by lack of communication between precincts? Did he die in prison on unrelated charges? Did he live out his days as a quiet neighbor, watching the news reports of his own crimes with a secret smile? Or is he still out there? An old man now, blending into the background of a world that has moved on. The Zodiac Killer reminds us that sometimes the bad guy gets away. He reminds us that evil is not always caught, that justice is not always served, and that the monsters we fear are often indistinguishable from the people we pass on the street every day. As we close this file, we are left with the chilling realization that the answers may have died with the victims, or they may be sitting in a dusty evidence box, waiting for the right technology to finally speak the truth. This has been a deep dive into the darkness by DCF Investigations. We have walked the blood-stained roads of Benicia, stood on the shores of Lake Berryessa, and peered into the fog of San Francisco. We have analyzed the codes and profiled the suspects. Now, we turn the question to you. Do you believe Arthur Leigh Allen was the Zodiac, and the evidence simply failed to catch up to him? Or do you believe the true killer was someone never named, a ghost who slipped through the cracks of history? And most importantly, do you think modern DNA technology will ever put a name to the face of terror? Or is it too late? Let us know your theories in the comments below. We read every single one. If you found this investigation compelling, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our next descent into the archives of true crime. Until next time, stay observant, stay safe, and remember, the truth is often hiding in plain sight.